Hello there. I am Scorched Scales, and over the past 2 weeks, yes, 2 weeks, I have been reading Dragonslayer, the Legends book of Arc 3, the book that provides a brand new perspective on the world of Wings of Fire, introducing brand new essential characters for the future, and providing the origins for the Sandwing War in Arc 1. But does it do all of these aspects well? How does this compare to the other books? Well, for that, we're gonna have to go to the tier list. So right now, after reading the book, personally, I would rank Dragonslayer around here. Yeah, this book definitely isn't the best, but nor do I find it terrible. There is actually a lot that I like about this book, but there's also a lot of stuff that I'm just meh on, and even more that I've downright just forgotten, therefore making my thoughts on the entire book as a whole as just meh. I do appreciate how this book did try to do something different, did try to do something new. It tried to come at the world from a brand new perspective. And hell, if anything, I personally believe that one of the best things this book does is how it portrays these characters looking at this world. But this book does have a fair few problems. Alright, so Dragonslayer, the side book for Arc 3. This book isn't really connected to Arc 3, like, at all. Like, the majority of this book takes place during Arc 1. I'm fairly certain that the first book occurs halfway through the book, and Dragonslayer ends at around the middle of Darkness of Dragons. To my knowledge, the only tangible connection this has to Arc 3 is the existence of Sky and Ren, who I am aware are present in later books because they're on the cover for book 15. I suppose I do have a fundamental issue with that, because if this book is included in Arc 3, I really think it should be there to strengthen Arc 3. Because that's what happened with Arc 2. We had Darkstalker. We had that there to strengthen the character of Darkstalker, and there to enrich the story of Arc 2 even more. But here, due to Legends not taking place during Arc 3, there's literally zero connection. But that isn't really a problem with this book by itself. That will just be a problem of the overall arc. Because if you are critiquing this book for not being a completely different book, then you're complaining about this book's mere existence. And I mean, like, yeah, its presence in Arc 3 does bring down Arc 3, but I do think it would be in bad faith just to write this book off immediately, just because it isn't directly connected to Arc 3. But I am pretty sure that this is the fans' least favourite Wings of Fire book, and a lot of that does stem from this not following dragons, this being from a point of view of humans. I mean, like, yeah, I do understand why some people would think this, because this is a world of dragons. But since this is a world dominated by dragons, you also do get an interesting point of view from the humans. Once again, I do understand why some people would be put off by this following humans. But once again, I think it would just be in bad faith just to write this book off because of that. But I do understand why, because it would be like making a Jurassic World movie where the dinosaurs aren't the center focus. Oh, alright, it would be like having Batman in a movie and having Batman kill. Alright, fair enough. It would be like making a Transformer movie and having it glorify war. Ah, come on! Okay, so, starting off with what I didn't like. I do have a fair few problems with this book, hence why I'm overall quite meh on it. But I really think the main problem for this book for me is the length. Now, a lot of the time in the past, I have critiqued the books for being too short, and how the books could have been better if there was just more time. Here, it's quite the opposite. I think this book is far too long. I'm fairly certain that this is the longest Wings of Fire book. I'm like, really? This? I mean, like, yeah, I understand how it ends up being like this, because it's an unexplored point of view, and you have 3 separate characters, all on their own completely different adventures. But I do think a lot of it wasn't really needed. Look, to clarify, I do like all these characters, but I can't help but think that I would probably prefer this book if it just followed Sky and Ren. Because if you cut out Ivy and Leaf and changed the book to have it completely follow Sky and Ren, I think this would be a pretty damn good book. But then you do enter the territory of me critiquing that, oh, why isn't this book a completely different concept? Which, yeah, I do seem a bit hypocritical considering that's what I was complaining about earlier. I mean, like, and it doesn't help that a lot of the time, Leaf and Ivy's story really blend together to me, because they are both these humans within a small village that fears dragons, and they both discover corruption within their system. While the 2 characters do have 2 different perspectives of the corruption, it does end up bleeding together a lot to me. But at least Leaf has a very clear set goal, where his goal is to go out there and become the next Dragonslayer. But meanwhile for Ivy, I don't know if this is my memory failing me, but she didn't really seem to have a goal until like halfway through the book. I mean, like, huh? We really should have established that earlier. Her first goal is to become a Wing Watcher, which is a very valuable position within her town. And she achieves that pretty quickly. And then her goal completely changes. But I can't help but to think that we could have gotten rid of a lot of both Leaf and Ivy's story. Even something that I noticed while reading the book is that Leaf and Ivy's chapters are a lot longer than Ren's. Which made me disappointed while reading it, because I was like, oh, finally a Ren chapter. And it's like half the length of the others. There we go again. Me contradicting my own points, because I just said, oh, why couldn't this book be shorter? And then I complain that it isn't longer. Another pretty big critique for me. Like Darkstalker, this book has 3 different point of views, but the 3 characters don't even meet each other until like you're 20 minutes away from the end. Like, huh? I just read 11 hours of 3 completely disconnected stories, only for them to collide at the very, very end. Meanwhile, in Darkstalker, the 3 POVs collide very early in the book, which does lead to the characters building a stronger bond. James Bond! But in Darkstalker, due to the 3 different POVs colliding very early, you get different perspectives on different events, and you get to see the consequences of what happened in the last chapter, just from a different point of view, because all 3 of the characters live in the same place. But here, due to all 3 POVs being separated for the overwhelming majority of the book, we end up skipping a lot of the character's story. Because, for example, Ren. When Ren is in Byrne's stronghold, and when she talks to Rose, we don't get to see Rose meet Sky. We don't get to see Ren teach Rose how to speak dragon. We don't get to see a lot of them actually bonding, and that does weaken the impact of Ren learning that, ooh, maybe I should be allowed to trust people. A odd critique that I have is that since this book does intersect 2 moments from Arc 1, there are a few inconsistency issues. Like in one chapter, we're at the end of part 1 of the first book, but then like 10 chapters later, we're halfway through book 5? Like, huh? That was quick! And even then, there is a moment where Sky is present at Burn's stronghold, and the moment where he is present is the moment when Thorn shows up to save Sunny in book 5. But if you can recollect what happened in book 5, that moment, that battle, was concluded by the presence of Peril. You know, Sky's sister? And her presence isn't even noted in the book. Like, come on, surely Ren would notice a giant burning Skywing. Like, yeah, she might not be able to connect that, ooh, this Skywing might be related to my Skywing. But a Skywing isn't even mentioned? Like, did Ren just miss her? Did she turn around? Was she too busy staring at a worm? I mean, like, I understand why, because you can't have Peril meet Sky before the end of Arc 2, because then surely Peril would have mentioned that, ooh, I have no one, but at least I have my long-lost brother. Like, yeah, obviously, you can't have them meet yet, but at least have Ren note that another Skywing appeared. She doesn't have to act upon it. All she has to do is point out and go, ooh, Skywing! And then, that's a consistency issue, just gone. Okay, and just one more critique before moving on to the positives. And this will become more prominent later on in the video. But this book has quite possibly the weakest side characters out of any Wings of Fire book. Because for literally every other book, there are very significant, very personality-filled characters. Characters which leave a lasting impression. But here, you don't really get that. Because the side characters in this book are very, very forgettable. There's like 3? Well, actually no, there's 5 side characters who I can name, but none of them really leave a lasting impression. A lot of them are just there. Like, for a series that really flourishes on how good its side characters are, this one really struggles in that category. Okay, enough negativity. Now, what did I like about this book? This book does include events from Arc 1. We see the main characters from Arc 1 in this book, but from different perspectives. I was aware of this before going into the book, because I was like, oh no, is this gonna be like cheap nostalgia bait? Is this gonna be like, ooh, there's the character you like? But no, the appearance of the main characters in this book actually means something? Oh wow, who would have thought? Returning legacy characters who actually mean something! Like Ren and Sky come across the Sky Hole that was in the Dragonets of Destiny's cave, and they see the DoD inside. And I was like, oh no, I'm not sure if I like this. Because it was like, oh, they just so happen to find it. Of course they do. But then the chapter actually turned around and had that be a emotional moment for Sky, which further strengthens Sky's and Ren's bond. When I first read that the DoD were in this chapter, I was like, oh no. But then at the end of the chapter, I was like, oh no, poor Sky. And the other prominent one to me is when Ren encounters Clay. Because throughout the entirety of the book until that point, Ren is focused and certain that his goal is to kill a dragon. But then he has a very short encounter with Clay, and him encountering him changes his entire perspective on how dragons can be. Because before it he was like, oh, dragons are big, mean, mindless, meat-eating monsters. But then, after being rescued by Clay, he was like, oh! Well, that's new! I do also really like the prologue, where we see Rose, Heath, and Stone break into the Sandwing Palace and accidentally murder the Queen of the Sandwings. It's questioned multiple times throughout Arc 1, where characters question how did humans do this? And here we get the answer. By accident! I loved seeing Rose, who we used to call Flower, learn more about Ren, and learn Smolder's name. That's probably just a soft spot for me, because I'm like one of 5 people who really like Smolder. He's pretty much my Gulp Shido character in Wings of Fire. Whenever he appears, I'm like, okay, so as for the characters, there are 2 very clear standouts to me. Easily my favorite characters in the book. Easily my favorite perspective in the book. Ren and Sky. I think they're both fantastic. I love them. I love their friendship. I love the dynamic. I love their story. I just wish we could have had this book centered around them. Although I do love these 2 characters. I will admit, I am not overly fond of Sky being Peril's brother, because a big part of Peril's backstory is that she doesn't have any family. She has no one. Her mother killed her brother when she was young in an effort to save her, only for Peril and her mother Kestrel to be separated during that event. And then after that, they meet one more time, only for Kestrel to die immediately afterwards. Yeah, Peril's backstory, it's tragic. But having her brother, Sky, survive and being, oh, the long-lost brother survived. Yeah, it's a popular trope, but I'll fully admit, it's one I'm not really overly fond of. Because to me, it feels rather cheap to go, oh, this guy who you haven't seen at all has been alive this entire time. I'm yeah, that does feel pretty cheap to me. But I like Sky. I like him as a character. So yeah, even though I'm not overly fond of the lost family trope, I do like Sky in this book, and I am happy that he is here, because him and Sky are easily the highlight of the book to me, as I will demonstrate by barely talking about the rest of the characters. There's Leaf. I like Leaf. He's alright. Moving on. Then there's Ivy. I like Ivy. Moving on. But now, as I mentioned earlier, this book has quite possibly the weakest side characters out of any of the books by a mile. Because there's only really 5? Hold on. Let me remember how to count. 1, 2, 3, 6, 5. Yeah, 5. The most memorable side character to me was Undauntable. And, he was just a nuisance. Then there's Stone, the real Dragonslayer. He's fine. Then there's Heath, the actual bastard Heath. God, I hate him. And for the last 2 really memorable side characters to me in this book are Dandelion and Violet. Dandelion. Yeah, they were characters. Even though I will fully admit I did find them quite funny. So, that was Dragonslayer. And my commentary was as messy as the actual book. Yeah, this doesn't really need to be placed in Arc 3. The only real reason why it's here is because of Ren and Sky. This does make me kind of wish that this book was kind of like the Guide to the Dragon World, where it isn't connected to an arc, it's just on its own, standalone, does its own thing. So Arc 3 could have its own Legends book that strengthens the actual arc. I like this book, I don't mind it. it does have some very big issues, like, this book doesn't need to be the longest in the series. But I do understand how it did end up being like that, because it follows 3 completely different, disconnected stories, which follows a new perspective in this world. I just think it could have been done a little better. But it has been mentioned, and it's very clear by the end of this book, that this is not the full story. Tui has mentioned that she wants to do a sequel to this book. Like, yeah, I would be on board with that, because since all the characters are now united, we might get to see them build a actual dynamic with each other, and possibly, it will be a lot shorter than this one. But that does make me kind of dread that the sequel to Dragonslayer will be the Legends book for Arc 4, but I hope it isn't. I hope Arc 4 gets its own Legends book connected to the story of that arc, whatever it may be. I hope we do get a sequel to Dragonslayer, so Tui will get the chance to tell her full story, and so people who really like this book get to see the full story. But I hope it ends up being like the Guide to the Dragon World, where it's not connected to an arc, it's its own individual thing. But as for the art that I drew in this video, I drew Sky, because I don't know how to draw people. Now, as I expressed in my Poison Jungle video, I said, wow, I really need to experiment with the posing of dragons. And that's exactly what I did. But I did struggle a lot with drawing the neck especially, because I knew what I wanted. Like, I really struggled with the posing of his neck. But hey, I'm happy how it came out. And yes, I did solely make his neck like this, so I could do this. I know it's dumb, but I like it a lot. And as for next week's book, we will be returning to the main arc with The Dangerous Gift. I know a little about this book, and I've also heard a lot of people say that this book does feel very disconnected from the rest of the arc, which I can very easily see how, because we're following somebody who has zero connection to the conflict that we've been seeing in the 3 previous books. But I am very intrigued to see why the next POV we have isn't connected to the conflict. Like, is that purposeful? Is there a reason behind that? Or was that just a mistake? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see next week. Hopefully, if I make the video in time. But knowing me, my procrastination, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes till next year. So yes, now, that's really all I have to say. My throat is starting to hurt, so I better end this now. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you another day.